Sorry for the pop-up you guys get whenever I switch the recording. So let's kick it off. What did we learn not only from Monday's class, but how were your open hack experiences?
It was good. There was a guy, and I still don't remember his name, even though Doug put it in the chat, in the thing. But he works at this place called Stitch Fix. I think he was kind of the organizer.
Oh,
Mike
Mike.
Formwald.
Yeah.
Right. And so he works at Stitch Fix, and so we were talking to him. We were like, because you never know where people work. So to know that he works for Stitch Fix, the office is out of San Francisco. He said before the pandemic, that he would go there quarterly. And then he was talking about different activities they did. Like there was like a biking activity that he did with like his fellow employees, like an interactive. So it was just a good like you got to talk to someone and they talked about their actual work experience. And he's like, when he was working from home, he gets up and rides his bike for like, he takes his son to the bus, rides his bike for 30 minutes. And he does yoga too. We talked about that. But it was just a good experience to talk to him and find out about like his day-to-day. Nicole was trying to get him to be her. And I was like, well, just come talk to the whole class. You know, if you want to be her mentor, but come talk to the whole class. So they did say that they will be getting in touch with you guys to come talk to the class. So
awesome.
That was a good experience, and some of the other people that we talked to were really good too.
Awesome. Yeah, it's nice to know that like you're not crazy. We're not just, you know, teaching you these concepts. There is a real development community out there and right in our backyards, right? I think that's one of the great things about Syracuse is that it's a big enough city to have those meetups and have that community, but not so big that you don't know who to talk to or you know what they're doing or it's nice that meetup exists because you do get to talk to people from all these different companies and different experiences and a lot of different levels, right? Like you guys, I'm sure, were not the only code newbies there, right? There were other people still learning how to code, all the way up to the people who are just there to hang out and talk to other developers and hear about your experience. And I really like that laid back environment, you know, where it's like, it's not a structured thing. It's not like, hey, you have to do this, but it's a good opportunity to socialize, which is definitely a skill, right? Of being able to communicate what you're working on and hearing about other people's experiences and kind of letting that feed into your energy and your growth is definitely worthwhile. Any other comments from either Monday's class or from Open Hack?
Learned that Samuel Adams was kind of good.
What did we learn Monday? How are we feeling about JavaScript?
I think it's more about like how you like read it, like comprehend it, and make sure you're understanding what exactly it's telling you to do, because I had to read it over and over and over again, like in the free code camp, just to make sure I understand it. And it's like, wow, you just missed a letter, or wow, you just missed a little quotation. So I'm thinking I'm doing something wrong, but at the end of the day, I'm really almost close to right. So
yep. Yeah, and the good news is I think by the end of class tonight, we're gonna have covered most of the JavaScript concepts, which seems nuts, right? We've only had 2 days of JavaScript, and now all of a sudden that's like the whole language. And so obviously we're gonna get into more concepts, but we're gonna work on just finishing up the basics, like the JavaScript 101, and then start working in projects now, right? So we're going to start doing a calculator tonight, and we're going to pull in some input, and we're going to get our first program actually up and running. And then we're going to just keep practicing on that, right? And the projects are going to get bigger and bigger, and we're going to go back to our Rex documents and having those all planned out. But tonight we are getting into taking input from the command line and building an application using that. We're going to use NPM for the first time. I think for the first time, we're going to talk about comments and arrays and how we can store data in lists. And then we're going to talk a little bit about loops, both for loops and while loops. We're going to touch on errors and try catches and how we can actually prevent an error from happening and providing a little bit more context there. And we're going to get into functions tonight, which is how can we group our code together and pass some data around. So that is the plan for tonight. We're going to start kind of a little bit project heavy with getting our first calculator up and running, just taking two inputs, adding them together and outputting them. And then we're going to dive back into JavaScript concepts and kind of go over it from there. With that said, office hours are at 5 p.m. on Sunday. That was the overwhelming time. I think it had more votes, twice as many votes as anything else. So office hours, this link, 5 p.m. on Sunday. And if you voted for that time, I believe Calendly should send you a reminder email for it as well. I don't know if it does that for the group events or not, but this is the outline for tonight. I do have the slides linked here. And then for homework, we're going to start working on the calculator. Just like Monday's class, I'm going to tell you, hey, you should follow along with what I'm doing, or wait, don't do this yet. The calculator part of it, I will let you guys know when we're doing that. And then the homework will just be to turn in what we worked on in class or to get it working. Before we dive into slides, any questions, any comments, any things from Monday's class that I should find a way to revisit in tonight's class? Okie doke. Okay, so two concepts that we're going to touch on really quickly here. We are going to use install and require, right? So npm install is a command we're going to issue in the command line. And what that's doing is it's saying, hey, Node Package Manager, install this thing called prompts. And you may say, all right, Max, well, how do we know about prompts? Well, there is a website. If I just go to npm, npm.com, I think. Nope, wrong site. npm, I just do a Google search for npm, npmjs.com. That is the Node Package Manager, basically repository of all the different applications out there. And so we are going to do a search for prompt, which is a package that we're going to use within our own code to make it so we can prompt the user for a number input and be able to output it. So we're going to use this prompts package. And within here, there is all of this information about the usage of it, how we start pulling it in and requiring it so we can reference it in our code. There's an npm install command. There's all kinds of stuff in here. Weekly downloads is a great benchmark to figure out how often a package is being used. Anything that's being downloaded over 100,000 times a week, chances are they have enough users that it's going to be stable and usable. But we're going to be showing you npm packages throughout the entire boot camp that you can use. So if you think of Bootstrap as kind of the first framework we used, a package is kind of in the same realm as a framework. It's basically predefined code that we can pull in. So there are basically three parts to using a package. The first one is installing it with npm. The second one is requiring it in. And then the third one is actually calling that in a method and actually using it. So before I dive in, we are going to put some asynchronous code into our JavaScript. Do not panic. Anything that you see on this slide, you do not need to understand yet. Asynchronous code is like the top level of complexity, and it is something that is required for us to use this package. So if you see async and await, don't worry about understanding that yet. That is just a concept. This line and this line right here, you do not need to worry about. We will be using it. You have to type it, but this is one thing that is actually completely fine to copy and paste. We will be coming back to async await later in a week or two from now. Okay. With that said, the whole program that we're about to write out is on this slide, slide number 4. I would encourage you not to use slide number 4 and just follow along with me. So this is a time that if you want to follow along, pop open your VS Code and we can dive right into it. So I'm going to move my slides out of the way. I'm going to pop open VS Code. I'm going to file, open folder. I'm going to go to week 7 and create a day 3 folder. And we're starting from scratch here. There's nothing here that we need from day 1. So I'm going to open that. And I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it calculator.js. I am then going to right-click on calculator.js. I'm going to open an integrated terminal. And down here in the terminal, I'm going to run npm install prompts. And make sure you have an S on prompts. The prompt package and the prompts package are 2 different things. We want the one with an S. So once we install that, you'll see that it created 2 other files for us over here and our node modules folder. That's basically where all of the package code is stored. We almost never, ever, ever want to modify any code inside of node modules. What we're going to be doing is using the documentation at npm in order to use this package. So we should have a blank line up here. Just to make sure everything is working, I'm just going to console log out the word hi, right? So console is a defined command in Node. Log is telling it, hey, put this out in the console, log this out in the console. We're doing parentheses to tell it, hey, this is a parameter that we're about to pass in or an argument. And then we use quotes here. The quotes are saying, hey, this is a string. We're not trying to find another variable here. We really want the words hi to come out. Then we close the quote, we close the parenthesis. Remember to save, Command S, and then down in our terminal, we're going to run node calculator.js. If you type in the first letter or 2 and hit tab, you should have hi for now.
I'm not getting the package JS.
Did you run npm install prompts?
Yeah, when I do that, it says not found registry something.
npm install prompts.
Okay, that one went you now.
Okay.
Might be a good time to do a poll, Max.
Yep. Good call.
I have a quick question. Well,
Yep.
I don't remember what we did to get the thing at the bottom of the screen.
Right click on calculator.js over here and then open an integrated terminal.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and the shortcut Doug found yesterday is control and then the tilde key. It's like control backtick, but control. And then when you hit it again, it will close it and bring you back to focus on the editor. And then you hit it again, it'll bring it back up and bring you down there.
Good tip. Control and the tilde, which is right beneath escape.
Okay.
All right. Someone is lost. Talk to me. Where are you lost?
It's me. How did you get the package -lot.json?
You run in the terminal, which you open by right-clicking on calculator, open an integrated terminal, and then you're going to run the command npm space install space prompts.
I'll work on it. Thank you.
Okay. So just a reminder, this will be for homework. So if you want to follow along, I have no problem slowing down and doing this step by step. If you are going along for the ride, please, please, please interrupt me with why, right? Whenever you don't get why we are doing something, please interrupt me and say, don't even have to say speeding ticket. Just be like, and why are we doing this? Or I don't get that. Or why did you use that parenthesis or whatever it is? just feel free to interrupt me or dump it in chat or go ping Karen, and Karen, I know, has no problem interrupting me.
Hey,
So-
Max.
Yeah.
It says npm install prompts, command not found.
So were you able to get brew and node installed?
I did that yesterday.
If you run the command node space -v, does it return out a version number?
You said, can you repeat that again?
It's node space -v, enter.
It's saying command not found. No.
Okay, try running just the command brew and seeing if you get output there.
Brew, yep, same thing, command not found. I actually
Okay.
made sure to do it yesterday. I could try to do it again. But yeah.
I would try and do that again. Yeah, it doesn't look like homebrew or node got installed.
All right.
Other questions?
It might have something to do with the update on your computer. Like, make sure your computer is updated, because I had that problem for a little while too. That stuff wouldn't work.
I have a question.
Yep.
Sorry, I turned off my video because there was just, Zoom was freezing up on me.
No problem.
I'm still here. What does npm install prompts do?
That is what is installing the package so that we can use it in our own code. So if you peek in node modules, you'll see that there are a couple folders in here, and prompts is one of them. And so basically what npm is doing for us is it's getting a copy of the prompts package and installing it locally into our project so that we can reference it coming up. So we can't just import or require code into our computer without the computer knowing what that code is. So basically npm install prompts is going out to the node package manager repository, getting a copy of prompts, downloading it into our computer, and storing it in node modules.
And what is prompts?
Prompts is a package we are about to use to get input from the command line or the terminal so that we can use it in our own code. So we haven't actually used prompts yet. We've only just installed it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
So then,
Danielle?
I think I missed a step. You mentioned the node modules. Where did we get the node modules from?
That's the npm install prompts.
Okay, and then one other thing, are you able to live share?
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for the reminder. Go ahead, Christy.
So, okay, so I did the npm install prompts, and it came back with the added 3 packages and audited 4 packages.
Yep.
But I don't have node underscore modules on mine like you do.
Did you?
Am I supposed to type that there?
No. Did you go file, open folder, and make sure you were in a new folder before you started creating files?
Oh, no, I didn't. I did that after you. I did that after.
Yeah, so I would close out of everything, open the folder that you mean to be in, because when you right click over here and open an integrated terminal, what that's doing is it's putting our terminal in the folder that we're working in.
So I want to go back out to VS Code and just start all over. So do the open again.
Yep.
Okay, okay. I think I'm there. Okay. Oh, wait. So, yeah, it didn't,
So you have to file, open folder, create a new folder for whatever day we're working on.
oh, so I need to delete what I created and start all over.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll do that. Okay.
So
thanks.
it's really important, because we're going to start working with across multiple files, that VS Code knows what folder you're working in. So if you just create new folders, it may not understand.
I got you. Okay, I'll do that.
Okay, any other questions? Got most everyone voted in the poll.
I'm fine.
Okay.
That low.
Okay, so we are going to keep going here. So we are going to use the prompts package. And in order to do that, we're we're going to go back over to the documentation. So the whole point of this prompts package is it is going to allow us to prompt a question in the terminal, get a response for that, and then do something with it in the variable. So what it's doing here is it's saying const prompts equals require prompts. This is the code that we're saying, hey, go to npm, use this prompts package that we installed and store it in a variable called prompts. What that's going to allow us to do is now use this variable called prompts and call some function that is built into this prompts package. So this is not natively built into Node. It's not natively built into JavaScript, but we're using this other person's code that they've built out all of this prompt interaction. And we're able, as long as we use the proper syntax that they tell us to use in the documentation, we are able to use their code. So this async part, it is fine to copy it right from here, or you can go to my slides and copy it from there. We're going to just copy that one async line and paste it into our code. And then we're going to go back to Chrome and take this last bottom snippet, copy that, and paste that in to our code as well. We are then going to go back to Chrome and copy this entire const prompts equals require prompts. Christy, are you still stuck?
Yeah, I deleted it and then I did it over again and it didn't do it.
Okay.
I didn't get the
Go ahead and share your screen. I just dumped this code into the live stream channel. So if you guys want to reference it from there, you can.
Just really quick, you did the whole like the whole block of code, or just like a few pieces?
Just a few pieces. The const prompts equals require prompts, the line with async on it, and the very last line.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so yep, Christy, go ahead and open an integrated terminal, and now you're going to run npm install prompts.
where
In the terminal.
Sorry,
No. This the terminal built into VS Code.
Maybe that's why I didn't.
One more quick question.
Yep, go ahead.
Am I putting this in the prompts drop down section, or it's no different than the regular calculator.js?
It should be going in calculator.js.
All right, thank you.
Max,
Yeah.
it looks like she's got like 4 terminals open on the bottom there. If you look on the right-hand side, yeah.
Yeah, I kept hitting it. So delete these.
Yeah, but that shouldn't be causing the problem. Oh, I wonder if I think I know what the problem is. Let me just request remote control. I think because you ran it in your regular terminal, it got installed on like your whole computer instead of getting installed in the project you're working on.
I got you. Yeah, I did do it there first.
So let me uninstall it there and then try and install it here. There we go. Now we're good to go.
Thank you. Okay. I broke it.
Okay, anyone else have questions before we keep going?
Could you just live share again?
I have a question.
Yep.
Should we be getting back anything at the bottom in the terminal?
if
That's
you
cool.
run node calculator JS, the only thing you should see is hi from our console log up here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we haven't actually used this yet. We installed it with npm in the terminal, and then we required it in using node. So node knows, hey, if you call this prompts thing, I know to go to npm, but now we need to give it direction of how to do it from there. So what we're going to do next steps is I'm going to go back to this documentation, and you see here it says const response. So this is basically creating the variable, constant, saying this is a constant. This isn't going to change once it's set for the first time. Our variable name is response. And what we're going to do is we're going to say equal. That's going to tell the computer, hey, go take whatever the output of this is and shove it into the response variable. Then we're going to use await. Again, this is one of those words you don't need to worry about it quite yet. We'll get into asynchronous code in a moment. And we're going to say prompts. Well, this prompts is going to come up here, and it's going to say, oh, I know what prompts is. That's coming in from require. If it's coming in from a require, that must be coming in from npm. So from here, it's going to say, hey, what kind of data would you like to prompt for? So we are going to use an object. We know it's an object because it's the curly brace, and we are going to collect certain types of data. We're going to say, hey, the type coming in is going to be a number. And we're going to give this thing a name so we can access it later. And then we're going to prompt them with some little message. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my code. I'm going to leave this up, hopefully, so you guys can reference it as I type it. But this is a time that I would say try not to copy and paste. Try to do this code on your own, because just like HTML, you're not going to get comfortable with the syntax unless you get practice typing it and hitting your shift parentheses and your curly braces and all of that stuff. So inside my sync code, my async code, I'm going to say const num1, and that is going to be equal to, and we're going to type in the await keyword again. Don't worry about that tonight. We'll come back to async await, and we're going to say prompts. And we're going to do parentheses because we're setting up parameters, right? We're sending in some data into prompts, so prompts knows how to work. And then we're going to do curly braces. And we're doing those curly braces because prompts is expecting an object with the data in it. So objects always have key value pairs, right? So the first key that we're going to use is a type. And the type is going to be a string called number. We are then going to say the name is going to be my num1, and the message is going to say, what number would you like to add first? So I'm going to save here. I'm going to go back to my terminal and run my node calculator. And what it should do is say, what number would you like to add first? I'm going to say 5 and hit enter, and my program is going to finish running and take me out to a new terminal. So we're going to pause there and start a poll. We're not actually adding any numbers yet. We're not outputting anything. All we're doing is asking the user, what number would you like to add first, and getting the 5 out. Talk to me on who's lost, who needs help, where are you stuck?
Were we supposed to copy it from the website, the console.log responsive / value 12? I mean 24.
No,
No.
you don't need to be doing that.
All right,
The only thing you should be copying and pasting is this const prompts, the async, and this part down here. Everything else you should be getting practice typing it in yourself.
I have an error coming up.
Okay.
I'm not sure which one I typed in wrong.
Go ahead and share your screen.
Here we go. Must have put something in wrong.
Message needs to be a lowercase m.
So Max, how do they know to print the message out to the
Okay.
screen?
Thank you.
So that is all part of the prompts package. So what the prompts package is doing is it's using a combination of console log and some other code built in under the hood to receive an input and be able to store that in somewhere. So that's kind of the magic of using a package, is that a lot of this code is pre-written for you.
So in JavaScript, I think I asked this the other day. So in JavaScript, the way that HTML kind of went ahead, and but this isn't giving like the parentheses or the quotation marks. So that doesn't happen in JavaScript.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
So like when we were doing HTML, if you type something and then and then it was like it was pre going ahead of you, when you clicked on it, usually it would give you like the quotation marks or.
So it will do that if I do like a console.log and type in my opening parentheses. I'm not sharing my screen.
Yeah, we can see it. I can see it. Oh, I can see it on the.
If I do my parenthesis, it's going to put in the automatic closing parenthesis for me.
Okay.
So it is still helping you out there. And it will do things like if I do my const prompts again, and then do a require and start typing, you see it will auto complete the word prompts for me because it knows I have the prompts package installed.
Okay.
And then the same goes for like, if I go to come down here and say console.log my num, I just type in NU and it goes, oh, I know that you have something defined called MUM1. Is that the one that you want? So if I hit enter on that, it will auto complete it in for me.
Okay.
I had a question.
Yep, go ahead, Danielle.
Okay, so I received back the hi in the terminal, and I received back what number would you like to add first, but I did not receive back a 5.
So if you type in the number 5 and hit enter, that should finish running the program and give you another command prompt to enter.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so the point of this question is prompting the user to input a number.
All right, thank you. That gives me better understanding.
Okay, I think we're good to keep going. Okay. So now we are going to come back in here and we want to redo this all over again, but we want it to do it for another number. So I could copy and paste all of this, but the practice of typing out the syntax, I know it's tedious, but it is going to become muscle memory for you eventually. And the only proof that I have of that is you see how fast I can type JavaScript. That only comes with time and practice. And when I learn a new programming language, I'm ready to kill someone because I'm typing so slowly because I don't know that syntax. So this is syntax that I promise you guys will get practice with. But what we're going to do is we're going to say const num2. And we are going to await again from our prompts package. And we're going to say the type on this is also a number. We're going to store it in something called my num2. And the message we are going to add is what number would you like to add to that? I'm going to save. I'm going to come down to my terminal. I'm going to run node calculator. I'm going to type in one number and hit enter, another number and hit enter, and I should get back to my terminal prompt from there. So I'm only going 2 steps ahead here and then I'll pause again. So we've got this thing in num1 and in num2, but we're not doing anything with it. And I can't tell if the computer's doing the right thing with it or throwing it into the abyss, or I can't see what the computer's doing with this code. So what I'm going to do is right after between my const num1 and my const num2, I'm going to do a console.log, and I'm going to log out my num1. I want to see what is in num1. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to rerun my program, and it says, what number would you like to add first? I'm going to type in a number and hit enter. And what does it print out here? It says my num1 : 9. Well, that my num1 is coming from this name here. But because this is in curly braces, what kind of data type is that? What data type has key value pairs?
Object.
An object, exactly. So what that means is that because it's an object, if you guys remembered yesterday, we can use that dot notation, and I can say dot my num1 and save that. And now I'm still stuck in my program from the last time it ran. So I could just hit a number and hit enter. But whenever we're in the terminal and want to just get out of whatever is currently running and get to a new line, we can hit Control-C, and that's going to bring me out to a new command line, and I can exit out of whatever's currently running. So I'm going to hit up, enter again. And now when I type in my number and hit enter, notice what prints out is just the number 8. That's because we said, hey, go into num1, which is getting stored here, but pull out the name my num1 from it and console log that whole thing. Well, that whole thing is the number 8. So what that means is I can move my console log. I'm just going to cut it and paste it down here. And I can say my num1 plus my num2 dot my num2, right? Num2 is coming from here. We know that is an object because we console logged it. And in that object, there is a key called my num2, and that key has a value of whatever number we typed in. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back to the calculator. I'm going to Control-C in the terminal if I've got a command running. And it says, what number do you want to add first? I'm going to say 2. What number would you like to add to that? I'm going to say 3 and hit enter, and I get 5 printing out. Stopping there, restarting the poll.
If you don't mind, could you just after the num2 when you start the constant log, could you repeat that part again?
Yes. So right in here, we've got our const num1, but we don't really know what's going on in this num1, right? We want to see what that num1 is holding. So what I do is I come down here and I console log out my num1. So num1 is a parameter, console log is a built-in function that we're using, and it's saying just output whatever is in here. So if I save that and come down to my terminal and run it, it says, what number would you like to add first? And I'm going to type in any number and hit enter. And what it did is it printed out that line right there. That line is in curly braces. So because it's in curly braces, we know that it is an object. And objects have keys and values. So the key is basically saying where it's stored in the object. What's the name of it? And the value is the part that we actually want to get access to. So it's saying my num1 has the number that you typed in of 7. So in order to get access to that 7, I need to use the key my num1 to get to the value. So in this num1, I'm going to say dot, because we use dot notation to access values using keys inside of objects. And we're going to say my num1. So now I hit Control-C, I rerun that, and it says, what number do you want to add first? I'm going to say 6. And now what's outputting is not this object with all of these keys. It is just whatever the value of the key is in the object. So I am able to kind of combine that with not only my num1, but also my num2. So all I'm doing down in this console log is saying, go to num1, come up here, get access to that my num1, and then come down here and add num2.mynum2.
Get it now. Thank you.
No problem. All right, we got 2 people lost. Talk to me.
I'm one of those people. I'm playing catch up.
Okay.
So I am stuck. I'm copying over. I'm following with the slides. So that code that you say that we don't need to remember, am I copying and pasting that and then putting in the const one away that way, or am I messing this up?
What slide are you on?
I am on slide. Sorry. Oh, what slide is this? The async text code, and it say don't panic.
Okay.
Is that
Yes.
3?
So you're the only thing that you're copying there is you can copy the whole thing, but the code goes here. That's where you should delete out and start putting in the code that we're working on.
Okay. But I keep receiving this little error message that say the is a syntax error, so I'm gonna try to do that and then remove that, and it make me fix what I need. I'll come back if it don't.
Okay, sounds good. Christy, go ahead. You're muted.
Oh, okay. So when you did the just the mynum1 by itself, where did you put the number? So you put the number down after the question?
Yeah, so here, I'm going to clear this out. When I run my program,
Okay.
it says, what number would you like to add first? And this white square is your cursor. So it's basically saying in your terminal, instead of a line, you get a block. And so I'm going to put in any number there. And when I hit enter, it says, okay, what's your second number that you want to add to it?
Okay.
And I'm going to say any other number and hit enter. And that's when it should be printing out my sum.
Okay. Okay. And this was just with the that was where you just did the mynum. Oh no, you didn't. Okay, so that's okay. I got it.
So again, this is a little bit more complex because prompts is storing my num2 in an object called num2. And so what we're doing here is num1 is the object, and from within that object, we are pulling out the key my num1, which has the value of whatever number got typed in. Shantina, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not sure what's going on with mine.
Go ahead and share.
Okay, thank you. Once I finished it, all of my parentheses turned red, and the second half it can't find or something.
When it takes me more than a minute, it's normally a good sign that you didn't do something. It should say number. That number should be name.
Here?
Yep.
Thank you.
And same for line 7. And so what you got was NaN. We are not Batman fans. That stands for not a number. Not Batman.
Okay.
NaN is not a number. So basically what it tried to do is add 2 things together. And it was like, I don't know what these things are, but it's certainly not a number. And that one you spelled calculator wrong.
Yeah, and I should have just did the up arrow.
If you do up twice, it should
Oh.
work.
So my second part isn't working. Maybe it's just a
Thank you.
No
typo
problem.
error.
Good work.
Maybe it's a typo error.
Wayne, go ahead and share your screen.
Right, somewhere here.
Okay, so what you're telling the computer to do here is go get number 1 here,
Mhm.
and then add number 1 to number 2, and then go get number 2. How can we add num2 to num1 when we don't have num2 yet?
Right. That's true.
So you need to move that whole console log to below the const num2, but still in the async. Nope. Down one there. If you just save, it should do the prettier for you. There you go. Okay, now give that a try. So a very good point here that order matters.
Okay, that makes sense. And then like maybe 6, 7, 8.
Beautiful.
Okay, thank you.
Shantina, I think you're good, so I'm lowering your hand. Danielle.
Yes. Can I share my screen?
Yep, go for it.
Okay. It's showing me a syntax error, and I tried to fix it, but it's still. I know that right here I had num1 instead of num2, and so I corrected that, but.
Yeah, so your only syntax error is on 19. You've got a colon instead of a semicolon.
Okay.
And then you do have one other problem. The very end of 19. There you go. And then lines 12 through 19 should be between lines 9 and 10. And then one more syntax error. You are missing an oh no, you're not. No, I think you should be fine. Go ahead and hit save there. And do you have prettier set up? Yeah, perfect. All right, that should get you to where you need to be.
What is it? It's
node calculator, and then if you just start typing it and hit tab, it should auto complete it for you. And then enter. And then type in your first number, so whatever. Yep, and enter, and your second number, and enter, and you should get the sum. Beautiful.
okay. Thank you.
No problem.
I have a quick question.
Yep, go ahead.
You probably said this, but for the curly brace, then the parenthesis, and then 2 parentheses together, we should just get used to typing that out. And because like when I was typing it, it wasn't going down, so I just went to the end and typed them all out. But I didn't want to do that if that wasn't what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, so like you want to get in the habit of whenever you do your opening parenthesis, making sure the closing parenthesis goes in, right? You want to get in the habit of whenever you do the opening curly brace, you do the closing curly brace. All of that syntax is like, remember how painful it was when those closing divs started appearing and you started fighting them? And then you have the light bulb moment of like, oh, it's not being hard. It's actually trying to help me. Same goes for the parentheses and the curly braces, right? You'll get in the habit of having that opening one and the closing one and all of that.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so we've got our 2 numbers adding together. Do we have any questions on how this program is working, why we use certain syntax? Any questions there? Other than async await. I'll find another instructor to teach you that. I mean, I'm sure we'll go back to that concept and cover it.
I'm just still trying to wrap my mind around how the prompt package works.
Yeah.
So I have a weird question too.
Okay, let me just answer Larry first. So Larry, one thing that helps with that is you can't, yes, I'm telling you how the package works or how to use the package, but I use this package for the first time on Monday. I've never used this package before. And so the only reason that I know, hey, this is probably a decent package, was that 17 million people have downloaded it this week alone. So that means that, or not 17 million people, but there have been 17 million downloads of this. So the weekly downloads is a good sign that this is a reputable package. And then I scroll down and I can get, just by reading their first snippet, hey, I understand how this works, right? The type is telling me what type of data are you prompting for? The name is where we are going to store it. The message is the message that we're displaying to the user. And at the end of this, if we console log out the response, it sticks it in whatever name we told it to stick it into. And so this is a very common thing whenever you're using a new package. Sometimes someone will recommend it to you. I can't tell you how many times I have heard a new programming language at OpenHack or some framework that someone's using and is excited about. But if you go down here, they've got all of these different examples, right? And you're able to kind of follow this code. And if you can read the JavaScript from top to bottom, chances are you would be able to modify one of those examples. So we've kind of already seen this with Bootstrap a little bit, but reading documentation is one of those things that, like, obviously we all need to know how to do as developers, but it's a very hard thing to teach. And so the goal is just over time, over exposure and practice using libraries, you'll kind of get the hang of how is it working. Now, I'm not recommending that you do this, but if you really want to know how it's looking, if you go into node modules and prompts in index.js, it's going to have the code that is actually running to make prompts work under the hood. Again, I am not suggesting that you go into this, because oftentimes, if we go into lib and index.js there, you'll see all of the code that's executing in order to make our prompts package work. So there's a lot going on there. But if you're really curious, you can go in there and it's all inception, right? JavaScript that's running other JavaScript that's running other JavaScript, and that's all the packages are.
Thank you.
Wayne, you had a question?
Well, within you talking, you kind of answered it for me.
Beautiful. Anyone else have a question? Okay, with that said, you've survived projects for long enough. We're going to go running streaming back to the slides. Okay, so one last run through of our program here. Our const prompts, we're just defining a variable and we're saying require node knows that it's teamed up with npm. Go pull in the prompts package from there. Now that we've got npm and the prompts in, we're going to tell the code, hey, there's some asynchronous code coming. Don't worry about that. We'll cover that later. We then come down and we create a new variable called num1. And we say it's a constant. And we say, wait for the prompts package to go run this code. And what code it's running is we've got to tell it, hey, whatever is getting typed in is a number. We tell it the name so that we can pull that out of the object eventually. And we say the message that we would like it to display. Once that comes out, we can console log it and see that it is in an object. We then repeat that process for our second number. We console log that so that we know, hey, is this code working? Is it storing the way I want it to? And then at the very end, all we do is add the two numbers together. That's it. You've written your first JavaScript program, believe it or not. If you have survived to this point, your non-free code camp homework is done for the evening. With that said, we're going to move on to if statements. So back to concepts. If statements, or also called conditionals, are a way to say, if this thing is true, do this other thing. And so the syntax that we use here is the parentheses are saying what your expression is, right? What you're checking to see if it is true. And if it is true, it's going to execute any of the code between those curly braces. So we've seen curly braces on objects. We've seen curly braces on, we are about to see them on functions. And we're also going to see them on our if statements. And whenever code is inside a curly brace, it is considered a block of code, right? It is just the hunk of code that is going to execute if this statement is true. But oftentimes we care if something is true, but if it's not true, we add in our else. So our if stays the same, we still check. If whatever is true, it's going to run the code in that first curly brace section. And if it is not true, it is going to do the code down here instead. And then we only have one more complexity to add to an if else, and that's an if else if else. And you can actually chain as many else ifs as you want. So you can say, if this is true, do this. Else, if this is true, do this. Else, if this is true, do this third thing. Else, if none of them are true, run the code down here. So let's dive into that. This is the example of what we're about to code out. I'm going to do it in VS Code. Totally up to you if you would like to code along with me. But I'm going to come down here and let's just do it after my num1. I'm going to say if my num1 dot my num1 is bigger than 10, and we used a greater than sign there, right? That's just a shift period. We are going to say console.log big numbers scare me. So I'm going to rerun my program. I'm going to type in a big number and hit enter, and you'll see big numbers scare me comes out. But if I control C out of that, rerun my node calculator JS and type in a number under 10, nothing comes out. So let's say I do want something to come out. What I can do is I can add an else here that says, oh, good, it's a tiny number. So I'm going to come back in. I'm going to rerun my program. I'm going to type in a tiny number, and I get, oh, good, it's a tiny number. And then if I rerun my program and say a bigger number, I get big numbers scare me. I can chain it one more time and say else if num1 dot my num1 is less than 0. I can do my console log so I come back into my program, I run my program, I type in a big number, it says big numbers scare me. I hit Control C, I rerun my program, I type in a regular number, and I get, oh good, it's a tiny number. And then the last thing I do is I run my program and type in a negative number and get my message. So again, if is the keyword here. Whatever we're checking our if for is the expression. And we are saying if whatever is in here is true, right? If my num1 is bigger than the number 10, then console log big numbers scare me. And I can actually run multiple lines of code in here too, right? I could add in another console log. That's completely fine. I can even put if statements inside of if statements if I wanted to. Then we have our curly brace. Our curly brace is saying, hey, a block of code is coming. And then whatever is in here is the code that's going to execute when that condition is true. And we can even get fancy and say, hey, what if we come down here and we say, not only do we want to check if it's bigger than 10, we also may want to check. So we're going to say if the number is bigger than 10 and the number is, I don't know, less than 50. So we did a double ampersand there. We've got a space on either side. And now that's saying if the number is bigger than 10 and it's below 50. So I'm going to save that. I run my code. I type in a number in that range and I get big numbers scare me. But if I type in another number that is not in that range, I get, oh, good, it's a tiny number. Why? Because this part of the statement was true, but this part of the statement was false. So this code isn't going to run. This code isn't going to run because it's not less than 0. So it comes down to my else statement, and that's the only thing that it prints out. Probably not a good example of a chained operator, but you get the idea. Questions on that?
So I was trying to type along with you and then you changed it before I could type what you put in to see. So I'm just trying to make sure. So what you have between like a line 11 and the line between a line 11 and 17 is a good example for us to.
And it's also in the slides if you want to reference that instead.
Okay.
That is slide number 8. Oh, and I also did another example in there to say if it's equal to an exact number, we can also do that.
Okay, thanks.
And there are free code camp exercises on this to get practice on that. Okay, so let's move on to comments. We knew comments in HTML were a arrow and the exclamation point and the 2 dashes. There are 2 different kinds of comments in JavaScript. There are single line and double line. So the single line comments are just 2 slashes. The multiple line comments are a slash and a star. And VS Code is already going to help us out on that. If we have our cursor on a line and hit Command/, you'll see it puts in our double slashes and turns the whole thing green. Same thing, if you type 2 slashes, it will do that for you. Now that code will not run because it is commented out. So if I rerun my code and type in a number that is between 0 and 10, you'll see nothing outputs.
Question.
Yep.
Is it a difference between like inline comment or like a multi-line comment?
Yep. Multi-line comment, instead of being 2 slashes, and I don't actually know, no, they're not going to do it. For a multi-line comment, what you do is a slash and a star, and then you can say multiple lines here, and you'll notice VS Code has everything else greened out here. That's because I haven't told it the end of the multi-line comment. So when I put in my star and my slash, that's what tells it, hey, now that is a comment that is multiple lines. So multi-line comments, normally I would say 90% of the time, I'm using inline comments to say something like that prints out if the number is between 0 and 10. But we would use a multi-line comment for something like up here where we want to say we are using the prompts package here to make it easier to receive input from the terminal, and that's why NPM is awesome. Something like that.
Got it.
We could do it with 3 things and slashes in between, but just 2 different kinds of commenting styles in JavaScript. Almost every programming language has a commenting thing, and most of them are different. CSS, I think, happens to use the single comments, the double slash, but it does not support multi-line out of the box. And obviously HTML uses different comments than our JavaScript does. Okay, on to the next thing, which is arrays. So arrays, we've seen objects a little bit. Objects are key value pairs. Arrays are used to store ordered data in a list. They can include multiple data types, including objects and other arrays. So you can actually put an array in an array, and that will be covered in Free Code Camp as well. And they are 0 indexed. That means when you say, I would like to get the first thing out of my array, you don't ask for the first thing, you ask for the thing at position 0, because computers don't start counting at 1, they start counting at 0. So if you want the second item from the list out, you're actually going to ask for the first index, which is going to give you the second item. So whenever you're thinking about arrays, if you're thinking about accessing an item, you access the item at an index. So this is index 0, this is index 1, and this is index 2. So let's play around with those a little bit. Again, this is just a watch. You do not have to do this for homework. If you want to code along with me, you can. But I'm going to go back to my VS Code, and I'm going to create just a new file called playground.js. And I'm going to play around in here. So I'm going to say our const fruits is equal to, now we've seen our curly braces for objects and we've seen our quotes for our strings. You got a new one coming at you now. We use square brackets for arrays. And in my array, I can define a couple things. Apple, orange, BANANA. We'll add the S in a moment. Okay, so in order to get access to that, I can console log out my fruits. And just like our square brackets here that we use for arrays, we're also going to use our square brackets to get out our index. So 0 means we are going to get Apple out of it. I'm going to save, come back down here. I'm not going to hit up enter because that's going to run my calculator. Instead, I'm going to do node playground.js and hit enter, and I got my Apple.
Question.
Yep.
For 0, could we do like those parentheses and then a comma so it can be empty for 0? Or no?
No.
No. Okay. Just question.
So if we make this a 1 and save it and run it, we get our orange. And if we really wanted to get fancy, we could make that a variable. We could say index equals 2, and we could put the word index in here and run that and get out our banana.
Max?
Yes.
So I'm not sure if this is what Nicole's asking, but even if it wasn't, I guess I'd like to ask if you took out Apple and had that blank, you had like nothing, comma, orange, comma, banana, and you did index 0, would it just be
that is, I don't believe. I did not know that that was valid JavaScript. I thought it would give a syntax error here. Normally what you would do is if you wanted nothing in that spot, you would actually use the word null. And null is a programming concept to basically say like nothing. Null and undefined are technically in JavaScript 2 different concepts. Undefined is when you declare a variable but don't put anything in it, and then null is when like that input, that variable doesn't have a value, right? So it is null. It's like a placeholder, right? It's not quite the same as 0 because 0 is a number, but null and undefined are 2 related ideas there. So normally I would do it like that, and then you would get undefined or null in the output. And if we take our index out of here altogether, we're going to get the whole thing to print out.
Thank you.
I learned something new today. I did not know that that was valid JavaScript.
Max, can you add anything to the fruits array or no, because it's a constant?
We sure can. Yeah. So what we're gonna do, wow, I can't believe I didn't cover that in the slides. In order to add something to it, what we would do is say fruits.push, and Free Code Camp is going to go over all of the array methods of what you can do to manipulate an array. And then we can just push in the word strawberry. And now when we run our code, we should have strawberry at the end. So to your point, Larry, because it's a const, this is not encouraged, but because arrays and objects are what we call complex data types, JavaScript isn't going to enforce you editing this by using a method. So if we came in here and we said, no, just kidding, we want fruits to now be equal to 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 4, apparently, and run that code, we're going to get an error, assignment to constant variable, right? So we can't assign something different to the fruits array, but what we can do is modify our fruits array by using the methods built into the array, like our push. However, this isn't really encouraged. If you're planning on modifying that array to add data to it, it is encouraged to make this a let variable instead, because now not only will our fruits push strawberry work, but we could overwrite fruits with something new, and that would also run.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's do one more array example. So we can not only store strings in our array, and we can store numbers in our array, we can even store objects in our array. So we can say const cars, and then because it's the square brackets that knows it's an array, now we're going to do our curly braces. Now we are putting an object inside of our array. And we are going to say the make is, you know, my favorite, and has a model. And then we could even put another object inside of our array. So we're going to do a comma, because the comma is telling it, hey, this is another index coming in the array. And we're going to say this is a make of Toyota and a model of Corolla. And now to get anything out of that, I can console log out my whole cars array and see that whole array there. And then I can dive into it, right? I can say, I want to get to Toyota. So where is Toyota in this list? It's not here, which is index 0. It's in index 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go step by step and drill into this data. So down here, I'm going to do my square brackets in my 1, because I'm saying go inside the array and pull out that whole object. So now when I run that, now I just get my make and model. And if I wanted just Toyota to print out, I could say .make. Run that code, I get my Toyota. And I can change that if I want to and say, go look in the first index instead. And I can run that and get my Tesla out. Or I could get fancy and say, I want my const, do I have key? No, I don't. I want my const key to go retrieve the model for me. And then I can modify, and instead of using the dot syntax, use my bracket syntax and add in the key. So now the computer is going to say, go to cars. I know how to do that. Go to the 0 index, which is going to be this whole object. Then go to the key. But because key is not in quotes, it comes up here and goes, oh, that's a variable. We're doing math there and taking model and plugging it in right here. So when I save that and run that, I get my model printing out. Okay, we are going to get into for loops when we come back, but since everyone would probably do good with a break now, because this was very concept heavy and not very code heavy, right? The good news is we've got probably half a day left of JavaScript concepts. And then all we're going to do is dive into projects and do project after project with JavaScript and getting practice with it. So when we get back, we are going to cover loops, we're going to cover errors, and we're going to cover functions. And then I think we might actually be able to get out of here early tonight.
Ooh, what? That's funny.
Nicole, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was talking with still somebody at OpenHack, and they were basically saying like doing multiple like websites can get messy, and I can see how this can be hard to like decipher where you mess up. So yeah, I just was thinking about that, like, we're gonna keep going and I'm not even gonna know where I left off or where I might have made a mistake. So I'm really gonna have to like crack down and like try to learn how to read this and make sure I understand everything. So.
Yeah, and I want to push, this is totally supplemental to Free Code Camp. And so I know not everyone can learn easily from reading, because sometimes you got to read it 5 times before it sinks in, right? So the hope is that you see the live coding out of it, you hear the explanation, and hopefully that's what gets it to click. If it doesn't, there are visuals for explaining how a for loop works, or understanding what the array is doing, or understanding, that whole process there. And I'm actually going to use a visual for functions to kind of explain how the code is executing this, and that may help something click. So you're totally right of like, sometimes it just takes time to sink in, but our programs are going to progressively build on each other, right? So what we're going to do by the end of tonight, we're going to do a tip calculator. And that's going to be very similar to our regular calculator, but at least you're getting practice with it, right? And then we're going to go a step further into that and build on the projects from there, because believe it or not, these are all the concepts. And by the end of this week, we're going to have all the concepts done, so that when we go into next week and I start writing out a function, you can go, yo, Max, I know you talked about functions last week. I still don't get how they're working. And because we just use them in a project, I can use that example instead of our little playground example and see if the repetition or another way of explaining it. Yes, good job, Max. Good words. Explaining it will help you get to that point.
Got it. Thank you.
We only have one more language to go after this, and after JavaScript we touch, it's not true, we have 2 more languages to go. We touch on JSX, which is like if HTML and JavaScript had a baby. So if you hate JavaScript and like HTML, or vice versa, the React is going to be an interesting experience for you guys. And then we touch on SQL, which stands for Structured Query Languages. And that is or standardized query language. I always forget which one it is, but that's for interacting with the database. But I want to say the vast majority of our code that we're writing from here on out is going to be in JavaScript, or is going to be HTML that we squeak into our React. I know it seems like a lot, but this is pretty much the end of syntax. We've got a little bit of syntax to do for SQL, and then there isn't much more to learn there.
Sure.
Other questions before we go on break? Okay, we will break now and be back at 7:15. And I'll stick around for a couple minutes in case anyone has a question. Resume the recording. So we are going to talk about 2 different kinds of loops and 2 different variations of those loops. So a for loop is used to make our code repeat, right? Because oftentimes we'll want the same code to run over time and time again. And it can be multiple lines of code that we want to run over and over again, right? So we're going to see our curly braces again. That's saying the block of code, anything between these curly braces is going to run over and over again. And so a for loop has a couple different parts. Just like our if statement, it's got a special keyword for, and we're basically saying for how many times do we want to run this loop. So what we do is there are three parts of a traditional for loop. The first one is the iterator, right? This is saying let I equal 1. That is basically saying, okay, where do we want to start this loop running? Then we come in here and we say, what do we check to make sure that we're not over it? This is basically saying, how many times do we want the loop to run? And then this last one is going to say, how do we increment that iterator? So when we do the I++, we're saying add 1 to it every time. So let's practice this code. I'm going to go back to my playground. I'm going to comment out my console log here, and I'm going to say for let I equal 1. And we're going to do the let here because we're going to add to that incrementer, right? We're going to adjust that as it goes. And we're going to say, well, I is less than 10. Go ahead and add 1 to I every time this loop runs. So I'm going to console log out this, in a quotes, this loop has run plus I plus times. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go into Node. I'm going to run my Node playground, and I get this loop has run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. That's because what happened here is every time I ran through it, it added 1 to it. But when it hit 10, it said 10 is not less than 10. So this loop is going to stop running. 10 is less than or equal to 10. So if we put an equal in there and rerun this loop, we're going to get it to run 10 times. We could also come in here and play with this iterator. We could actually say, hey, we actually want it to go up by 2 each time. So now when I save this and run it, it's going to run infinitely. Well, that's a good reminder of when your code is running infinitely, you can hit Control-C and that will stop it from running. So one of the side effects of a loop is that it can run infinitely. I might need to do I is equal to I. There we go. That's what I wanted it to do. So this is a good example. I is going to start at 1. So the first time this code runs, it's going to say 1 is less than 10, less than or equal to 10. So it comes into this console log and runs it. And I is coming out in here and it's saying 1. Now it hits the end of this code. It comes back up and it says, what do we increment I by? We almost always do I++, but in this case, just to show you, you do have control over it. So if you wanted every other item to print out of an array, for an example, you could add in, you could do I equals I plus 2, and it would add 2 to it and skip over it, basically. So now 1 gets 2 added to it. That becomes 3. I is now no longer equal to 1. It's equal to 3. It goes in, it prints out this console log because 3 is not less than or equal to 10, adds 2 to it and keeps on going. You see when it gets up to 9, it prints that. Now at the very end, it's going to say 9 plus 2 is now 11. 11 is not less than or equal to 10. So this loop is now done running. Nicole, question.
Okay, this might sound a little slow, but I've been trying to anytime I click on my screen, it highlights my whole code. And then if I try to press space, it goes away. Or if I press enter, it goes away. And I'm trying to go back, but it just won't stop. I can't, I don't know. It's just, I don't know how to explain it, but.
Go ahead and share your screen.
I was trying to keep up, but I anytime I go right here, it'll just delete my code. And then it won't
So,
anything else.
Go ahead and just click up.
I did that too. Hold on.
Oh, do you have a shift lock on or something?
I don't know. It just, I can't keep up because it just keeps doing it.
Hit the shift key and then try clicking in. Okay, I would just quit your VS Code. So Command Q.
Oh, Command Q.
I don't know how you did that.
Yeah, it just does it. I don't know. I think I need a mouse. I think that's what it is.
And then you can go back into your VS Code. So just reopen it.
Oh, I don't know where it is. Yeah, it starts like that too.
Okay, but now if you click, just click into it anywhere, like go back to the, go back. Okay, now just click on like line 13 or something. Okay, there's something.
Yeah, it'll just, yeah, I give up. I was getting frustrated earlier. I was like breathing all hard and stuff.
Let me, I'm gonna try. But it's not, it's working fine for me.
It's probably my touchpad then. I probably just need to get a mouse. That's it.
So try clicking now and seeing if it's going to do that same highlight thing for you.
Yeah, if I click at the bottom of this right here, it just
Yeah.
highlights. Yeah.
Let me.
I'm not trying to copy. I'm just trying to type.
Click tracking. And you're just using one finger on the trackpad, right? Karen, any ideas of what would be causing that?
No.
I can watch and come back to it.
Yeah, if you're still having problems, let me know or schedule a one-on-one with me. I think you're right. It's something with like your trackpad, but I don't, because when I just remote in, it does everything right, but I just have no idea what would be causing that.
Other than completely closing out of VS Code, because it doesn't need an update, right?
No, well, and we quit VS Code and reopened it and it's still doing it.
It's fine. I don't.
Yeah.
Nicole, there's nothing sitting on your keyboard, is there?
Nope, nothing. Just this is my iPad.
That's all I got.
Yeah.
Try disconnecting the iPad and seeing if that's affecting it in any way, shape, or form.
It shouldn't.
It's
but
just on display. Like it's not even connected to my MacBook or nothing.
Yeah. Aren't there like buttons on the side of the iPad though, like on the screen for like selection or shift or something?
Yeah, but it just stopped. Like it just, I don't know, out of nowhere my iPad just stopped. So it just
Okay.
It's fine.
I don't know what the problem is, but I would be infuriated by that as well. So I can either help you at the end of class or during a one-on-one tomorrow, and we can try and get it figured out.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
You're not crazy if that is any solace. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna go back to sharing. So any questions on our basic for loop?
If you can mute me as well.
Yeah. Okay. So the other kind of for loop that we can use is nope, too far. For loop variation. So this is a more common kind of for loop because it is specifically looping over one particular data set. So we can use a for of loop whenever we are iterating over an array. When I say iterating, I just mean literally pulling out each value of the array. So a good example of this is we can come back into our fruits, which are up here. I'm going to put this back to Apple. And what I can do is I can say for, and the problem is that we've seen how we can use our fruits to pull out individual values, right? But what if I wanted to pull out each one of them and say, one of my favorite fruits is, and have that print? Well, what we can do is we can say for const fruit of fruits. And what that is doing is it's going to go into my fruits, and every time this loop runs, it's going to pull apple and dump it into fruit for me. Then the next time it runs, it's going to pull orange and dump it into fruit for me. So I can say in here, console.log, one of my favorite fruits is, and now I can say plus my fruit. Now notice I'm not saying fruits, because if I said fruits, I'm going to get the whole array. But what the fruit is coming from this individual fruit, which is looping over of all of my fruits. So, and then I'll just add an S to it. Oh, that won't work well with strawberry. Plus, and so when I run this code and comment out this code, so it's not running anymore, I get one of my favorite fruits is apples, is oranges, is bananas, right? So that's just a quick way to iterate over every item in the array, dump it into this variable, and then we get access to the variable right there. Okay, any questions on basic for loops? I know this is super boring because it's just concepts, but all of this will build on each other.
So back to that const thing, because it's a for loop, each time it goes through the loop, it's actually creating, it's like recreating the variable.
That is exactly what it's doing. And we could use a let here, but while in this for loop type, it's reinitializing the value every time it's going over it. On this for loop type, it does not reinitialize the value, which is why we have to use let instead of const.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. So one other type of loops, and this is kind of just one of those things where it's like, we've got to teach you everything in the language so you've got an idea of what it is a while loop. While loops are not used particularly frequently, but it's basically saying while some condition is true, keep on running this loop. And so the one thing that you want to make sure you do in a while loop is make sure whatever condition is going to set that equal to false is getting incremented in this loop. So basically we say, hey, let I start out at 0. And while I is less than 10, execute all of the code in here. So we can have our text and console log out our text. And then we add 1 to I, it hits the bottom of the loop here, it comes back up, I is now equal to 1, it runs through, and that would run 10 times. Okay, last concept before we get to functions, and then I will let you guys go for the evening. Sometimes we run into errors. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this loop and use it in my code. So I'm going to actually put it up here so we can see our fruits. So I'm going to save that. Now, does anyone see what the error or the problem is with this code right up at the top?
It's gonna go, no, yeah, hold on. It's gonna go beyond the thing.
It's going to go outside of the array because look, we're starting at 0 here, right? Because array indexes start at 0. So first time it runs, fruits is going to be 0. It's going to print out apple. It's going to be done. Now it's going to come back up. I is now 1. 1 is still less than 4. It goes to fruits. It gets the first index, which is the word orange, really the second value, and prints that out. Now I is going to be 3. 3 is less than, I'm sorry, I is going to be 2. 2 is less than 4. So it goes in, it gets my banana, and it prints that out. Now it comes back in, I is now 3. Well, 3 is less than 4. So this loop is going to go to my fruits and try and get the fourth thing. Or there is no fourth thing in it. So if I come down and run this code, I get this undefined, right? Because there is no value in that array at that fourth index. However, this is why you should test your code before you teach it. I thought that was going to error out and not give me undefined. And it did not throw an error on me.
Is it supposed to be plus plus next to I? Or-
Yes. So
Oh,
whenever
okay.
you do a plus plus, it means add 1 to the value. So that is a very common incrementer. I'm just so we'll do this. If this is a good example of our if statements. If the length of fruits is -1 is equal to the index that we are on, then we are going to try and access a variable that doesn't exist. So let's just say num1. If I run that code, now we get this very ugly if statement, right? Where it says, all right, I can print out your apple, your orange, and your banana. And then when it gets to the end of the loop, it says, oh, I'm at the end of the array. Go ahead and console log out num1. Well, it's telling me in here, num1 is not defined. And so this is what we call a stack trace. A stack trace is trying to trace through your code and tell you where exactly your error is. And so you see here, it says playground.js. That's saying, all right, it's in the playground file. Obviously, it's in the playground file. But this :6 is saying, hey, your error that this is happening on is on line number 6. And so whenever you get an error like that, it isn't something where you just go, oh, let me go read through my code and I'll find the problem. One of the ways that I can find the problem so quickly is that I'm reading through this stack trace and I'm going and I'm saying the problem's got to either be on line 6 or right above line 6. The other thing is this error is trying to help you, right? It's saying num1 is not defined. Okay, well, what does not defined mean? It means we haven't declared it anywhere. So the way we can get around this kind of is obviously if we wanted a num1, we could go declare it. But what we want to do sometimes is wrap our code in a try catch. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say, try and do some code here. So we're going to use our curly braces, just like we have for our for loops and our if statements and all of that stuff. And we're going to say, try and console log out num1. And then we are going to catch whatever the error is. And when we catch that error, we can say console log that variable might not exist. So when we run that code, now we don't get an ugly stack trace with all of this information in it. We just get that variable may not exist. And of course, we could fix that by just doing our const num1 equals some value. And now when we run that code, we no longer get that variable may not exist because it's not erroring out there. But if we take that out and run the code, we get that variable may not exist because we're basically trying to run this code and then we're prepared to catch any errors that come our way and do this instead of showing the error itself.
Catch the error and show this. Okay.
Make sense for everyone? It's important to expose you to these concepts, even if you're not going to use it in your capstone or because you're going to be reading someone else's code and you're going to be like, catch, what the heck is catch, right? And so you'll think back to, oh, I remember Max week 7, day 3. I'm just kidding. But, you know, getting exposure to this and knowing, hey, sometimes errors are going to happen. And sometimes that I won't have control over where that error happens, but I do want to catch it before it makes it to an end user. Okay, last concept for the night, and then hopefully we can get you guys out of here early. And tomorrow we will start work on a tit calculator just to reiterate all of these concepts. And then we'll hit the home stretch for JavaScript project for JavaScript concepts tomorrow and be in project land all of next week. Okay. Last thing I want to show you guys, and I actually am going to use the slides for this one if I can find them, is our functions. So there are two types of functions. This is considered the older style of functions. We actually use the keyword function, and then we set the name of the function. We then declare what the two parameters are coming into this function. A function can have an unlimited number of parameters. And then we do our curly braces just like we have for everything else, and we say what is going to happen in this function. So in this one, we're adding num1 and num2. And what the return is going to do is send whatever the output is of this entire function back in to where we call the function. So this is, like I said, the older style. I'm going to show you the newer style, but it's important to show you this because this is the way that functions were written in JavaScript for almost 20 years. So that when you guys are reading someone else's JavaScript code, I don't want you to look at this and be like, what's the word function doing in there? This is the way that most functions were written for a long time. However, this is the new style that is preferred, where we say const add. We're declaring a variable, and that variable is going to happen to be equal to these two parameters that are going to execute the code in these blocks. So this is called an arrow function because this little section looks like an arrow. That's just the equal key and the arrow, greater than sign. But this is the more preferred way of writing a function. So let me show you how this code runs, right? So this const add, the computer is just putting that in memory. It's going, great, I'm not going to run any of this code until you tell me to add two things together. So we come down into this console log and it goes, great, you want a console log. What do you want a console log? Add 5, 2. So what happens is this add, when we call it with the parentheses after it, it knows, oh, I need to go run that function. So it sees add and it goes up here and it goes, great, now I know where the code is that you want me to run. Next, it takes 5 and 2 and dumps them into the parameters. From there, those two parameters get dumped in to num1 and num2. The computer then sees those two, replaces them, and says return 5 plus 2. Okay, so it's going to add the 7, and then that return means go back to wherever this add was called, which is this whole area right here, and put in the 7, and then console log that 7 out. So again, none of this is actually code that you would write. I'm just showing you how the computer is thinking about this, right? Because it's very easy to get lost in where are all of these functions, what function is referencing another function, what's that function called, all of that. So again, I'll go through this a little bit quicker. First thing the computer does is it stores add in memory and knows, hey, if you call add with parentheses after it, that must mean that you're trying to run this code. When we go to call the code, it comes back up to this add, and the 5 and the 2 get put into our num1 and our num2, right? Because it's just in the corresponding order. If we had a third parameter in here, we could call our third parameter whatever we wanted in here. From there, those numbers get put in, and they get put into num1 and num2. The computer adds the 5 and 2 together and gets 7, realizes that it's going to be part of the return, goes back to wherever the add is getting called, which is all the way down here. The 7 gets put in there, and then that's what gets console logged out. So this is just an animation. The computer is doing this behind the scenes. You're never actually going to write the code that's going to say, just console log 7. But hopefully this is an idea of understanding the flow and how that's going through. So let's just code that out in practice. So we are going to get fancy, and let me just make sure everything's commented out here and here. Okay. So the bottom of our playground, we are going to say const multiply. Is equal to, and we need two numbers together to multiply. So I'm going to get fancy and I'm going to call this integer 1 and integer 2. We can call those parameters whatever we want, as long as when we reference it inside the function, we use these names. So I'm going to say return integer 1 times integer 2. And now I save this, I run it, and nothing comes out. Why not?
Those weren't defined. Oh,
Nope.
no.
Integer 1 and integer 2 are defined right here.
You haven't called the function or given any parameters.
I haven't called the function exactly. So this is in here. We're just telling it this is what you should do when multiply is called. But we never actually called the function. We never said go run this code. So in order to do that, we have to run multiply and we put our parentheses in. But our parentheses are just our placeholders for our parameters. So now we can say 5 and 4. I save that, I run it, nothing comes out. Well, we did a step in the right direction. What did we miss?
Quotes or maybe another comma or something. I don't know.
Console.log.
Console.log. What we are doing here is we're returning the number, but then we're not doing anything with the number. We've got to tell it, hey, console log it out or do something with that. So if we put this whole thing in a console.log and run it, we get our number out. Okay, that is all the concepts and content that I have for you. I can give you two options going from here, and I'll actually pull this out. We can either work on a tip calculator, just so you guys have practice and exposure to it, and I will go quite slow through it so that you guys can follow along, or you can decide to get out of here early and we can do the tip calculator tomorrow.
Some more. I'm okay with doing some more.
Poll is launched.
How are we supposed to choose number 2 and you put in I
I
hate?
know, man.
I saw that too.
Hey, I'm not paid hourly. I'm happy to stick around.
The crazy part is I just clicked that so quick because I'm like, I gotta get out of here.
So I have a question.
Yep.
For console log, I know that we're like in a playground type of thing, but for a console log, is that what is pushing it
To the terminal.
Right, but when you say terminal, like when we were doing the HTML and the CSS, were we pushing that to the terminal too?
No. So the HTML and CSS show up in the browser window, right? That's where your code is running. But your JavaScript can modify your HTML and CSS, but when you console.log something in JavaScript, it's either going to go to the terminal you're running the JavaScript in, or the console in the browser.
So this is behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. So this is not.
Now your JavaScript can modify your HTML so it's not completely behind the scenes, and we will be getting into that in 2 weeks.
Okay.
But right now we're only focused on JavaScript and getting that to work.
I just wanted to understand the console log portions because I don't know. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, but no, thanks for asking that because I didn't really know what it was for either. And that was good clarification for me because I just thought, I didn't know. So
yeah, we're only doing kind of behind the scenes JavaScript right now because it's normally a bridge. I find a lot of teachers want to teach JavaScript like browser first, and there's a lot of browser first specific JavaScript that can make it hard to understand the concepts here of, oh, a variable is just math, right? Or a function is a couple lines of code that's running or stuff like that. So, okay, so the vote was for end early. So I will, I have proof for that. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to stick around. If anyone has questions on their free code camp, if they got stuck anywhere or did an exercise where they didn't understand it, I'm going to stick around. If you have any problems getting your regular calculator to work to add the two numbers together, let me know. I can stick around and help you with that. Otherwise, we are ending early and you can feel free to get out of here.
I'm
Have a good night, everybody.
Y'all have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
I know I voted out, but I'm
night.
on bar.
Don't answer her.
But he wasn't talking about free code camp before. See, he's different. I'm going to do free code camp. So
I will stick around. You guys can work on your free code camp, or if you have any questions, feel free to jump in, or I will stick around for just a couple minutes to see if any questions pop up.
okay.
You want to go through that last one that you just did a while ago? Multiplication one?
Yep.
Yeah, and is JavaScript gonna become more like multiplication and like division is gonna get harder in like the math area, or that's just it?
No, that is.
I need to jump back in algebra.
That is the full extent of the math that we are doing. It's very hard to teach like the basics of JavaScript without touching on like a little tiny bit of math for like variables and that kind of stuff. Ariel is not on tonight. There is one exercise that we did in cohort 2 that was like so math oriented that like the entire cohort was like, screw this, I'm done. I don't want to learn JavaScript anymore.
I don't think you taught that though.
No, I didn't. I came in right after that and everyone was like, JavaScript is dumb because it uses a lot of math. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? The most math that I have done in my job in the past 10 years has been, I think, dividing things out and maybe dealing with the remainder of something. That is pretty much the extent of the math that you need to do for this. But yeah, let me, Wayne, go through this last one that I did. Would it be more helpful for me to do it in here or do it with the slides and the arrows?
If you do it in here, it's better.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so what we do is we say const multiply.
Did you want to record this part or no?
Yeah, I might as well.
Yeah.
This const multiply is like any other variable that we define. What's different about it is we use this arrow function. That arrow is saying, hey, there's a block of code that's coming in here that we're going to execute. But before we can get to that block of code, these parentheses are saying, hey, there are parameters coming in here, right? This is the data that's getting sent in to the function. And so we just need to name them so that when we use those variables in the function, we know what they're called. So we do our arrow function here that's saying, hey, this is a code that you're going to execute later on. We put our curly braces in, and then we say return. Return is what is sending the end result back out of the function that we're running into wherever we are running it. And then what we're doing is we're taking integer 1, which matches the first parameter, integer 2, which matches the second parameter, running that code and returning it. Now, all of this code never gets run until we have multiply and some parentheses. Those parentheses are telling it now's the time we actually want to run this code.
Okay.
And so we're saying 5 comes in, it goes into integer 1 goes there, 4 comes in because it's the second parameter, it goes in here, it gets multiplied out, and we get that result. What I probably should have done in class is show you the point of a function is that you can call it multiple times. So we can do 2 and 3 in here, and now we're not only going to get 20 coming out, we're going to get 6 coming out as well.
Okay, I get it now. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Yeah, that definitely helped me understand that way better too.
Cool. Yeah, sometimes those arrows on the slides really help, and there will be times where like once we get into backend code, you're just going to be like, I don't get it. It's 50 lines of code. I understand all 50 lines of those codes, and I don't freaking get it. And that's when I'll be like, screw it. And I'll bust out the annotation tools and I'll start drawing lines on it. And that is often a light bulb moment. So functions is the first time that I find that like the visual is really important. And just explaining through how is the computer running this code? Because when we understand what the computer is doing, it makes it much easier to understand, you know, the concept. Exactly.
So true.
So I,
Christy- oh,
so
go
what
ahead.
so the just want to clarify. So there's the brackets, right? And the brackets are
The curly braces.
yes.
Okay.
Those are what are those? Because I understand now that the parentheses is what makes it execute, but what does it mean? What do the brackets
The
mean?
brackets just mean this is the code that's running inside the function. So we could do something like add in additional lines here,
Mhm.
right? So what we're doing here is the brackets are saying whenever you put those parentheses in and tell me to run the multiply code, I'm going to start running the code at this curly brace and stop running the code down here.
Okay.
So these curly braces are basically the start point and the end point for the function. They're saying anything that is inside these curly braces is what is going to run when you tell me multiply parentheses.
And then the parentheses is just
These parentheses,
no, just like down, just in, I
These.
guess kind of in general, like those, that just means that you're going to, that's what it's.
so they parentheses can mean a couple different things. In this case, they mean parameters are coming into a function and go ahead and execute them. So the parentheses up here are saying we're going to put our parameters inside of this, right? We're going to put the data coming into it inside. Down here,
That's the
they mean the same
instruction.
thing, but because we put the word multiply in front of it, it's telling it not only to run the code, but to also pass in the 5 and the 4.
So the const multiply is the instructions, and then the console log is like the execution of the instructions.
This is where it stores the instructions.
Uh-huh.
This is where the data for the instructions comes in, and
Right.
these are the instructions to execute.
And then the parentheses down there, that's execution.
Yes.
Okay. I want to get all the little intricacies and idiosyncrasies so that
You better watch Christina, Cole, and Wayne. I'm going to call on you tomorrow and pull up this code and say, explain this to everyone else.
please don't. Okay.
No, those light bulb moments are important, and that's why I'm okay ending class a little bit early, because like I know I keep saying this, but I just dumped 90% of all of JavaScript on you. And so it's like we just need to let that sink in a little bit, right? And practice with it and get it there. And it's so easy to watch me write it and be like, well, yeah, I get him writing it, but unless you understand why I'm writing it and what the computer is doing, and that's just such a hard thing to like teach and confirm and make sure the student is there. And the only way to really do that is in the one-on-one of saying like, well, talk me through this code. You try and explain the code to me, and doing exactly what you just did, Christy, of saying like, this part is storing it. This part is the actual instructions. This is the execution. Like those are light bulb moments to me. That's where I see light bulbs turn on.
This is totally algebra, but okay.
Yeah.
This is it. I promise no more math after this.
Yeah, no, I was getting ready to thank you again, Christy, for asking those questions, because I wouldn't even have, like, I'm thinking the same thing, but I probably wouldn't have asked the question. So
when I see this stuff, sometimes I'm like, okay, I gotta find a video, I gotta find a YouTube, but I'm like, no, wait, before you go find a YouTube, because it might give you way more information than you need. Just break down the question break down what it is that you really want to know, and then ask the specific question before you freak out and think that you need all this information. And Karen, if you have a JavaScript reference type book that will help us to, because I think there's not a lot. I think I read where there's like only like 9 or so many things that you use, but you use those like multiple times. I thought I
Yeah,
read.
I
Oh,
haven't, I was writing them down and I have the list. I was gonna put them in Slack for you guys tonight, the JS books that I use.
okay.
Okay, thank you.
So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Christy, are the
Like
9
six.
things? The
Is it
9
9?
things.
Was I right?
Well, I'm wondering, are the things that you're thinking of like loops, variables, functions, input, output? Is that like along the lines of what
Right,
you're
it's
thinking
something
of?
that I read when I was in free code camp. So it was saying that there was like a list of things, but it wasn't a long list. But those were like the main things that you use when you're in JavaScript.
Oh man, now I'm gonna have to go find that list because I didn't know that was in free code camp.
Let me see. You talk as somebody else asks a question, and then I'll find oh yeah, I might have copied and pasted it so I could remember that. But somebody else asked a question and I'll find it.
How's everyone day so far?
It's not too bad. It's been good.
Well, I will tell you, my day today was a lot better than my day yesterday. I spent 6 hours writing 15 lines of code yesterday, and I finally got them working and sent them up to the server. And the server said, sorry, you can't use those lines here. And I had 6 hours of work just go up in smoke.
Oh, wow.
So those days happen. There are also days like today where I wrote over 1,000 lines of code and they're currently being used by like people in our software. So like those days don't happen frequently and they happen less and less once you get up in experience. But I just like, as soon as I got the error message, it was like immediate heartbreak because the error message was so clear of why the error was happening where I'm like, I can't get around that error. Like that's not
Crap. I'm gonna have to start all over.
that was the exact thing. And I just went back to my boss and I'm like, I can't make that button work for you. And he was like, that's okay. Can you make it work if I ask you to do it manually? And I'm like, I sure can. And he was like, great. That's all I need right now. So it's like something I'm gonna have to fix eventually. But I had one of those days yesterday where I'm like, thank God I'm not teaching tonight because I cannot be excited about programming.
So I was working on trying to get so instead of doing a blog, I was gonna do both really to go hand in hand, but to do my vlog. And I was trying to figure out, this is just random, but to start my intro, like, do you think I should use Fiverr for that? Because I was watching YouTube and they had like horrible reviews. I remember you mentioned Fiverr before.
In terms of like just having like a intro promo clip.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't really worry too much about that. I would just post your videos without one. You look back at like any of the big YouTubers and go back to their first videos, and it's like ridiculous to think that, this person now with like millions of followers or subscribers, started off with like recording on his iPhone 3G and, no video production, no lights, no any of that. So I would say the most important part is just starting, because like once you get a video recorded and get it posted, then you can start getting into like, oh, maybe I should have an intro, or, oh, it really would be good for me to record like a 15-second clip and then have my intro play and then have the rest of the video, right? So I have tried numerous times to try and get like just videos produced around, teaching how to code. And the hardest part is always getting started, because once you're started, it gets really easy from there.
Okay, thank you. I think that's what I'm gonna do.
Of course, I can't find it now.
Was it basic data structures, numbers, strings, arrays, objects, functions, loops, if else statements, and more?
Possibly.
That's in their basic JavaScript course description.
I see. I can't find where I read it, but there was like a list of things, and it was very small. Like there's just saying like this is what you're going to use. Is that 9 of them, or is my number off?
1, 2. Well, if you count basic data structures as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's 6.
Okay, but then maybe that's what it was. I don't know. It was something that it seemed like it made it seem like there was going to be minimal things, like you were only going to work within these things. So that was what it was, but I don't know where I got 9 from. Maybe I turned the 6 upside down. Okay.
I mean, there's obviously a lot more JavaScript to learn, and we're going to get you comfortable on that. But again, important to recognize that this is a journey, and that like you probably couldn't have made a web page or done any HTML coming into this or any styling coming into this. And by the end of this, you're going to have not only built an app, but build an app completely on your own. That's your own idea. And that's, I think, important to recognize, like, as we go through this, because it's easy to like leave frustrations in the past and not recognize that all of this is building on each other. And by the end of this, you're going to have a full stack app.
Yeah, so I did have a
Trick my brain to think that JavaScript is doable. That's why I need confirmation on these single things.
I had a question. So did the last 2 cohorts do like a website for the capstone, and we're doing a mobile app? Is that the difference?
We are not doing a mobile app. We are doing a web app.
Can you explain the difference?
Yeah, so 3 different things you just touched on there. You touched on mobile apps. Mobile apps are apps downloaded in the App Store, iOS App Store, Google Play Store, right? We are not doing those. Those require a different programming language. And our job title coming out of this that we are closest aligned to is full stack web developer. And so we don't touch on mobile apps, although that is something that after this boot camp, you could go into mobile apps and realize that you've got 75 to 80% of the knowledge that you need, and you could just fill in the gaps with mobile.
Okay.
Then there are 2 other things. There's a website and a web app, right? So when you go onto a website, that's just a traditional content gets posted there. There's no interaction with it. The website developer publishes it. You see it, but there's not much interaction with it, right? So I go on insomniacookies.com and I see their location and I see their hours, and that's a website. What my distinction of when it becomes a web app is whenever it's interactive. So when you're on Facebook and you can post your own pictures and reply to comments, right? Okay. So the web app is when it starts getting interactive, when there's an API, when there's a database involved, when there's dynamic content, when someone posts one thing and another person can see it. That's when it becomes more of an application.
All right, thank you. Thank you. So like the responsiveness and you click in, all that. Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Now you can make a responsive web app that feels like a mobile app, and your end user doesn't really know the difference, right? And most good websites also have a responsive web portion of it and make that interactive, right? So it's very rare that you're on your phone these days and you load in a page and you're like, oh, I have to pinch to zoom, or like, it's like most websites today are built with mobile in mind. But we just push that over the line a little bit and say, hey, if your capstone's a website, that's fine, but let's find a way to make it a little interactive, either having users add comments, or having an admin interface for yourself to be able to add posts, or some notion of, even though this may feel like a website, I can go into this admin portion and update something in the database, and that will update on the website. And that's what we push it over the line to get it into the web app.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have decided to turn my brain off. Thank you all. Have a good evening. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Same. I'm gonna
Bye,
head out.
everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Wayne, any questions before I head out? Or
I'm
Chaz?
all set for tonight. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Sounds good. I'll see you guys.
All right.